going to be on decentralized autonomous organizations. Do not let your eyes roll back in your head. Because really, what that means is how people organize themselves and how people incentivize good behavior or bad, or disincentivize not productive behavior. And this is going to be a deep and very interesting conversation that you all should be a part of, because it really even has huge political implications. I'm sure they're going to get into that. And come on up, amazing people. We have Dale Adams.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Joe Holmes. Angela Brasington. And Marlon Williams. All right, y'all take it away.
Thank you. So, as you noticed throughout the day, they've been doing like a one-on-one class prior to the actual panels and discussions. I kind of wanted to throw this in a different form just because I think it'll be more applicable when you do or don't understand DAOs. I do have a question. Anybody know what a DAO is or participates in a DAO? Oh, we got a few people. All right. For those who don't and are kind of rolling their eyes back in their head trying to figure out decentralized autonomous organizations, we're going to kind of do that for you here today. So first off, I'm going to let each one of us introduce ourselves and kind of why we're here and go from there.
Thanks, Dale. My name is Joann. I am an IP and digital assets attorney. I help brands and creators be able to think through smart Web3 strategy, monetize intellectual property, and close successful deals.
And bear with my voice, I'm losing it a little bit, but I am Angela Brasington, the CMO at Starter International, which is a leading launchpad, incubator, and investor network for business building on blockchain.
Hi, I'm Marlon Williams, founder of Starter Labs, and also soon to be admin of Blockchain Center. And we're just here to share some information with you guys. Look forward to it.
And I'm also Dale Adams. I go by Post-Architekts online on the Twitter space. I am what is called an Orcanaut with Orca Protocol. So basically what Orca Protocol is a way to help decentralized autonomous organizations organize better using a different structure that we call pods. And I kind of will go down this experience in mind, and you guys can follow along for a second. Sorry, I had to write a script on the phone, so I'm going to kind of do it. This is going to be one of those one-on-one classes you're either here to love because it's going to involve a little bit of participation to be more effective and efficient. Also, there was, yeah, I already did that part, sorry. So I'm a storyteller, and I have a question for you all who believes that art can change the world. Yeah. All right. I believe, honestly, that fiction creates a reality. I'm not necessarily here to discuss the political ramifications of that, although we might be doing some governance discussions here in the view about DAOs. So whether you believe or don't believe, I think that fiction is creation of books, music, or art existed in someone's head before they shared it. Some of that fiction could arguably be responsible for the mobile computer in your pocket. Star Trek kind of started that, and now we're here being able to communicate using that technology. Why is this important? I think that fiction has an ability to either create where we're going or where we're heading, and one of the things we're going to kind of talk about today is that process and how it ends up being able to change the way we experience the world in general, and how we can communicate more effectively using DAOs and organize using DAOs as well. And so there's no better way than through experience, from what my personal belief, and through that we're going to basically form a DAO right now. Everyone in this room is part of this DAO. This is what a DAO looks like, except it's virtual. All of us, with our tools, with our skill sets, coming together around the one shared purpose or value. And now we have to figure out what that shared purpose and value is right now. Anybody got any suggestions?
Art can change the world.
Art can change the world. Anybody else? Music can change the world. Music is art. We're going to need another variation of that. No, art can change the world. All right, we can do that. We can do that with a creator DAO. We're going to make a creator DAO right now. And through that, we're going to basically come up with a way to build an NFT collection. Who makes 3D art? Who makes art? All right, we got 3 people back here that are going to use their skill set to help us make an NFT collection. I lost my spot. There you go. I'm farther ahead than I thought I was. So basically right now, what we're going to do is we have a story we're going to build around NFT collection. Through that, we're creating intellectual property. And now that we have NFTs being made, I think we can start asking questions to the panel here and start going, what is our next steps? And what do we need to do to make this a successful project? And what do we also need to cover our bases when it comes to legal ramifications of such a thing? But I think we can go with Angela as far as like, what's next in the NFT after we create it?
So after you have all of your art, you have to turn it into an NFT, right? In order to be able to market it, to put it on marketplace, to sell it. So to do that, there are platforms out there that allow you through really user-friendly methods to input all of your art into IPFS, which basically stores everything. And then it outputs your files as non-fungible tokens. So whether it's a JPEG or a GIF or an MP4 file, you can turn that into, from your basic artwork, turn it into an NFT this way. There are platforms like OpenStarter and NFT Launchpad that we're doing this, and we've designed it in a way to speak to creators like you, to make it super simplistic from a technology point of view, so it's not very difficult to do this. We know you're focused on your art and building, and from there, once you have all of these NFTs, you can create a drop. Again, a very simple, seamless process that is basically like filling out a form, and it takes all your NFTs now and puts them into a drop page so that we can host an initial NFT offering, which is an INO. And then from there, after your INO, you can list it on any marketplace that you would like to begin trading these NFTs.
So I have a question. So now we have an NFT drop. What part of this puzzle is missing that will be most beneficial for us, right? Like, we have people that are creating in the community, but what else is part of that process that I think helps? What I like to refer to as the value cycle, right? Like, we're creating value by creating the art, but then the community also needs to get something in return for that experience and being part of that process.
Yeah, sure. So there are, just to piggyback on what Angela said, multiple ways and approaches to going from art to essentially trading or production. One is through Launchpad, like what Angela and I have been doing for the past couple of years. And the other is just through your own site, right? So the benefits of, there are pros and cons to both approaches. If you're creating a site on your art, your NFT, the majority of the work is, from a promotional perspective, your responsibility for the most part, right? Getting individuals, getting an audience and building a community around your artwork is 100% your responsibility. Going through a Launchpad, it's always going to be your responsibility, by the way, but going through a Launchpad, there are some benefits because typically there's an existing community that in the tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, that you can piggyback on essentially into this existing community to promote you for your work. So that's the first step, is deciding whether you're going to roll it yourself or go through a Launchpad, or do a combination of both. Once you've made that decision, then it's about community building. And we've worked together launching a little over 50 projects in crypto, DeFi, GameFi, really getting heavily into NFTs. We've helped raise $40 million from these various projects over the last 12 months alone. As a result of that, the experience that we've gained in just building communities, it's amazing. I think that's the most important component of going from the DAO, building the art, creating an NFT, and community. And I'll let Angela speak on that because she has a ton of experience in building, going from 0 to 100 fairly quickly in terms of that.
Let me ask a question right there, because I think, you hit on a specific thing, that the community is the biggest part of an NFT. You can put an NFT collection together and put it out there, and if you don't have anyone else that's backing you, or you don't have the people within your Discord or whatever community platform that you're using, then that NFT drop probably is not going to find its people. It's all about marketing. We all know that. So what comes back to is the community itself, and how that community can help you succeed with your NFT drop, and what does the community receive in return. And one of those things that I think that I'd like to address, at least in multiple ways, and first with Angela, and then we'll get the law aspect into this, is what using social tokens and how those can be beneficial for developing a community, as well as, I'll come to a question for you after that. How about that?
Yeah, I think back to Holmes and also community, that's the first thing we tell any project or artist that we're about to work with is you need to build your community first. If you have all of this art ready to go, you're ready to do your INO, and you have nobody that you're communicating with, that you're telling, this is my work, this is what I've been working on, this is how I'm doing it, get them involved, it's not going to be successful, like Dale said. And there's no longevity after a failed sale, a failed INO. So building the community through partner launchpads or other communities that you can then infiltrate your project to and expand that way, along with growing your own at the same time, and constantly keeping that community engaged. Tell them what you're working on, show them things, ask them, what do you like better? Get them engaged as much as possible so that they know what you're working on. Share your roadmap, like what's to come, what is it going to be, what are they going to be able to do with that NFT? How can they use it? Does it give them access to something? The more they know, the more likely they are going to want to be involved in your project and getting on your INO. So it's crucial. And back to how they can be used, they, just like that, they can be used as access to special, say it's a music NFT, special behind the stage, behind the scene rehearsals, special access to merchandise that nobody else gets, special concerts, backstage intimate level situations that you don't normally get, or you have to be really rich to be able to be a part of. It opens it up to so many more people, and people that are like-minded. Somebody that cares about Dallas's work over here, they have long-term, there's long-term use for this NFT, and it's something to them that they care about, that they're going to want to be involved in long-term, not just for a quick flip, not just for a quick buck. So I think the utility, along with community building, but utility, and it's important. You've got to show that there's usage behind it. Otherwise, it's just a piece of art, and that can be a hit or a miss, as we've seen.
I completely agree, and kind of going back to the community thing, I think one of the things that I wanted to mention is, like, you can get people to be a part of your community, and you can get people to participate, but also I think the other part of that, and I had a conversation with Joe the other day, was that it's about also participating in other people's community and finding people that are interested in your project just because you're part of their community and they're willing to help you out. So don't think like, if you're doing an NFT collection or you're trying to build a DAO or however it ends up going, that people aren't going to be interested in what you're doing, and you should go out there and participate in other DAOs and other organizations and see what's out there and see if something strikes home with you. So kind of going back to the story aspect and what we're kind of building, we have an NFT collection in general, and we're putting that out there. I think if you weren't here earlier, or if you were, we might touch on some of the same aspects of the law and how NFTs can be applied and kind of are still to be figured out around the NFT and what it can do in social tokens. So I'm gonna kind of ask Joe to chime in on this as well.
You want me to just rip, or you have a specific
Yeah,
question?
no, there's no specific question there. I think the question would be like, what are the legal ramifications?
I think we have a question.
We have a question. All right, we got it. Sure. Can a DAO act as a work for hire during a legal entity and a work for hire? Gotcha.
Wow, okay, this is not for the masses. But I will answer the
The
question.
101 has gone away and we're now diving.
So I think for the purpose of the larger audience, when you think about what is a DAO, it is a group of people who have come together for a common purpose and who oftentimes have a treasury so that they can make decisions and put assets towards that objective. Under the law, a DAO, just as a group of people coming together, starts out as a general partnership, which might sound great and egalitarian, but ultimately what that means is that you all have liability for everything and you all own everything. And when you don't know what decisions other people are making, I'm not sure that you want your house and your bank account and all of your personal assets to be on the line. So a very smart thing to do, which might sound counterintuitive to the goals of being decentralized, and maybe, quite frankly, you're looking to be creative, we shall say, around some law by being decentralized, you've got to think about what do you really want to achieve as this group of people who've come together. And so under US law, one of the key things that I talk to my clients about is I want to protect what you have built, both in terms of your intellectual property and innovation, and I want to protect your house because I want your spouse and your kids to be okay if in the United States somebody sues you. That's a real possibility. So how do you protect yourself? One of the key things you do is you build a shield between you and what you're doing. And that shield can look like an LLC, it can look like a corporation, or in the state of Wyoming, they've actually acknowledged a DAO. But there's the, if I dare say this, there's the legacy DAO, where the organization is kind of run from smart contracts and from code. And then there's a newer version of DAO where people are coming together really with a perspective around, we don't necessarily have to be run by smart contract or code. There can be a lot more governance by the people who own an NFT or own a token, but you still want to think about how you protect yourself. So if we go to the question that was asked around, can a DAO enter a contract functionally? Can a DAO more specifically enter an intellectual property focused contract? Well, the members should be making that decision. And if the members are making a decision that they want to be frank, make money from what they're creating, then there are some things to think about. Defensively, you want to think about making sure you're not stepping on someone else's toes and you're in a position where someone is in a dispute with you and coming after you. Offensively, you want to think about owning your trademarks or your copyrights so that you're in a position to go out and enter strategic partnerships, do license deals, and make money and bring that treasury back into, or bring that money back into the treasury. So, can they enter contracts? It depends. The best practice there is to set up an LLC or set up a corporation, or if you're in Wyoming, set up a Wyoming DAO, so you have a legal protection, and that entity that is protecting you is the one who enters the contract. It is possible, but it depends on how you set up your organizational structure. Woo!
Yeah. We had a conversation before this the other day for an hour, and I was like, I learned more in an hour than it happened. A year being involved in other DAOs from a legal aspect. And I think one of the things that I was thinking about was that to kind of take, to take a step back and kind of go, one of the bigger aspects, and I think that Angela might be able to chime in on this as well, is one of the aspects as part of the community is that DAOs are having a hard time with, and you want people to be engaged in your project when they actually arrive at the Discord, is the information that they receive when they show up. Because if you start a DAO, or it's particularly if you have an NFT drop, we'll just even going with an NFT drop, if you don't have a way for your people that have shown up and have found you to be onboarded and know what's going on and be able to contribute in any way that they know how or they can, then you're going to lose those people and they're not going to be interested after a while. And that is one of the bigger aspects that I think people kind of miss. And Orca Protocol also, we are dealing with that very same thing as it's happening in real time. People are showing up to the Discord, they're going, well, how can I contribute? And we're like, we don't know right now, we're gonna figure that out real quick. And so that's a big aspect to doing NFTs and DAOs as a living in general. And I think, do you have any other things that you could drop in on that?
I think more to what you said before about joining and really being active in the community as a whole is a really important thing. It's not all about me, right? You've got to be giving back at the same time. And what we've noticed is that's really what's going on in this entire NFT creative economy. This community of people really does seem to care about each other's work, their art, their project, and their success. And it's really nice to see. Like I have to say, it's a shift from everything that I'm used to in the past with traditional work. And I think it's so very important to give the love back. And the more you do, you're going to start seeing them coming in. You're going to start seeing your community grow because they like that, each other, supporting each other.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, going off what I mentioned earlier, if you become part of a Discord and the Discord has grants available and you're contributing, you just kind of upped your ante. If you're helping them out, you've put your foot in the door by going, hey, I have this project, right? And being able to share that project with the community, and you're not chilling so much. The big word is don't chill, but put your project out there and see if you can find anyone else that's interested in it, and anyone else that can help you launch it. You can find, Marlon, people like Marlon and Angela that can help you do that. And obviously, anyone else that wants to be a part of that project.
Just to add on to that, I think another important part is educating your own community. So you're connecting with other communities, but then in your community, you're sharing all of those things like we touched on earlier to really let them know that something is coming. We are building and we want to share it all with you. And it also keeps them there, it keeps them active. They know something's coming. They don't feel like you just left them stranded.
I would just add to that, be careful about the way you're representing that. You don't want to inadvertently find yourself in a position with the SEC where you are representing the NFTs as having value appreciation or a token as having value appreciation in ways that it starts to look akin to a stock, and the Securities and Exchange Commission can have regulations around that as well as fundraising.
And I think just to add on to that, the structure is very important as well, right? So you're referring to people coming to your Discord and having a proper structure in place. One of the most recent DAOs I still am involved with is the Open DAO. And they took a very unique approach to building a community, which was to do a vampire attack on OpenSea. Essentially, anyone who transacted on OpenSea over the last year or so received an airdrop of tokens. And that was just an initial sort of community building event. There were so many creative ways that you can trigger that you can apply to build your initial communities for your projects. And with the Open DAO, we made sure that when users are coming, right, so they're attracted by this airdrop on OpenSea users. When they came to Discord, there was literally a structure for development, right? So if you're a developer and you're interested in contributing in that aspect, you could. Marketing, research, alliance, and so forth. So you want to make sure that immediately you're given options for participation, right, to leverage their strengths, and that's very important. So we've built, it's maybe 50, 60,000 members now, just utilizing that approach. But it's very important to have the Discord in place, very well structured, to capitalize on that first attention. Very important.
If I can can just add one thing, be careful. I completely understand why engagement is so critical. But if you think about it, the way that our governments work is through tax structures. And if people are providing services in a way that starts to look like employment, state, local, federal governments are going to think, is this person actually serving as an employee? And should you be paying into our tax base for unemployment taxes, for the income that might generate from the DAO? So just be careful, some of those legacy legal issues will have an impact even in Web3 spaces.
And one more thing, dealing with the SEC is a pain in the, I personally had to do it, so please pay attention to what you think.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things you mentioned, education is part of this whole process, right? All of us here in this room are so early. I can't tell you, like, I was at Denver, there was a whole bunch of people there and everybody was super excited. But we all know we're like super early. Like, this is just the beginning. And we have to figure this stuff out as we go along. And if you feel left out right now, I can highly recommend, like, there are online education platforms that you can find, like Rabbit Hole. If you don't understand some of the language that we're talking about during the day, check out Rabbit Hole. They will guide you through the process. It's like a learn to earn scenario, so highly recommend Rabbit Hole. And there are a few others out there that my brain can't think of currently. But I did want to give a little piece of legal advice real quick because it was something I thought about earlier today and it's kind of off the cuff. But if you get paid, let's say if you contribute to a DAO and they decide to pay you in Ethereum, straight up Ethereum, are there taxes to be paid on that if you do not cash that out into USD?
I should say I'm not a tax lawyer.
Right.
No, I'm actually an intellectual property lawyer, but when you do work in Web3, you need to know a little bit about securities, a little bit about corporate, and a little bit about taxes. So the answer to the question is, if you are being paid for providing a service, that very much, again, looks like employment. Or it could be an independent contractor relationship. A lot of nuance goes into answering that question. But either way, the state, sometimes local, let's say for example you're in New York, and federal government want their cut. So it doesn't matter whether you're being paid in fiat, US dollars, or you're being paid in ETH or Bitcoin or what have you. At the time that you are being paid, that's going to be treated as income. And just like your W-2 wages, your job that you get your paycheck from, the government wants their component of taxation on that. They're going to want their component of taxation if you're a business on the profit, the component of revenue minus expenses that you are taking in, again, for providing a service. So yes, it is taxable. Just in general, when you're thinking through crypto taxes, whether something is treated as an investment or as earned income is going to have an impact on the taxation.
How about social tokens? How does that work? If you're a part of a DAO and I get paid in a social token as part of that DAO, how does that work? If you go in with the expectation, following legal ramifications, that you're not, it's just a social token, there's no value based other than the community that's involved in, and you can spend that social token on whatever, creating generative AI within the community and sharing it. Does that still qualify as taxable or not?
Geez, I'm not a CPA. I took that tax and law school, so I'm really pulling together my knowledge base here. But I followed CPAs who are crypto CPAs and accountants speak to this issue, and a lot is going to depend on the value of the social token. And so let's think about friends with benefits. I don't know if they've actually got a token, but
They do.
okay, so to be a member of FWB, you're going to have a lot of cachet. There's a flex associated with that, and I would imagine there's a market if you want to sell that token so that someone else can get into FWB. That can look taxable if you are earning revenue from trading off that token because maybe you got it for free or maybe you paid to participate in the group. So a lot is going to depend on whether that token is being treated as compensation and whether it has value just in the DAO for governance purposes or what have you, or has it, for example, gotten out on an exchange? Is it on Coinbase? Is it on Uniswap, where you can find value in trading that token? Also, be careful as an organization, as a DAO, about how you're representing the value of that token. Because if you're representing it as an asset that will appreciate in value, we're back in the SEC space.
Gotcha. All right, I'll keep that in mind this year. So kind of going off, I'm gonna go back a little bit and ask Angela or Marlon, sorry about that. What are some of the biggest things that you've seen or have launched projects that were detrimental to the project that caused it, other than not having quite enough community backing behind it?
What things have they done or not done, you're asking, basically?
Yeah, either or, yeah.
I mean, it's, a lot of things go into what makes a successful project. Tokenomics are key, investing schedules are key too, but like we work with the projects on these things prior to launch to, if they are laid off, to get them where they need to be, where the investors in the community aren't gonna run away because the vesting is so long and it's not worth it, or their game isn't gonna launch. The other thing too is that if you say it's a game, whatever the product is, if it's not ready for so long after your idea or your launch, or your, I don't know, if it's an NFT, well, no, I guess if it's a project, if it's not ready for a long time, these investors lose interest. Everybody it's a short attention span, so you really have to be prepared in advance of that and have it built into your roadmap. And we all understand in this world there are delays, there are iterations of testing that has to get done, but you have to keep a little buffer and keep that close to launch for it to continue the success of a successful launch.
I'd add that I've seen the quality of your work is very important as well. It's like the market is becoming oversaturated in terms of NFT launches to the point where, you know, rugging is almost as it was with normal token sales. You know, there are just a lot of projects that are launching, they're minting, raising $1 million, $2 million, and then disappearing. So the quality of the project is important. Building a community obviously is important, but just being not essentially creating projects simply for the purpose of raising funds. You gotta have a real purpose behind it outside of that. The idea of fundraising is to help you essentially get well capitalized to continue building great art, delivering great art to your community, to the world, and not simply to, you know, raise money for the hell of it. And we're seeing that a lot recently in the NFT space.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those. You gotta, as I mentioned earlier, do your research and make sure that you're following up. And these people have been a part of some community, and they'll just randomly show up and end up with, your money, and they disappear off the face of the planet. One of the things that I really kind of harp on a little bit, because as our personal experience or work protocol, is the education aspect of onboarding people, not just to your community, but the importance of you being an ambassador yourself and sharing your knowledge of Web3. Because one of the bigger aspects that I think everyone on this panel, probably in panels earlier, have mentioned is that how can we not leave behind marginalized communities that don't have access to either internet or mobile technology, and what does that look like?
I think it's tough if you don't have access to the internet.
Sure.
If you do, let's think back to the early 2000s, say, when we were mindful around how do we create opportunity for people in the developing world, and mobile technology made it possible to get information that was a leapfrog for people who don't have access to maybe the financial institutions and paradigms that we have here in the States. What I think is really exciting, is, at least in one aspect, is DeFi and cryptocurrencies' ability to help the unbanked here in the States and abroad have an opportunity to onboard and meaningfully participate in financial transactions, be they focused around NFTs or just in crypto as an investment or a trade for that matter. So the fact that, and it depends on what exchange you're on, whether it's centralized or decentralized, whether you have to get into, money laundering and know your customer things, but just the access without having to go through traditional financial paradigms to participate in this ecosystem based on your talent and not based on what country you live in, I think is an extraordinary opportunity.
And I also think it's important to have a user-friendly platform that makes it easy for non-crypto or for newbies to be able to access and understand it and have guides. Like we offer guides often that walk the user step by step through the process of entering, participating in an initial DEX offering, and we have the same thing for NFTs, for initial NFT offerings. So I think it's really that educational side and breaking down the barrier a bit for people that are brand new to this and make it more attainable.
And by the way, I'm a recent transplant here in Atlanta. I love it. Just coming from. Thank you very much. Coming from Miami, so and I've built my entire career in Miami in the last 2 decades. I've witnessed the city go from a similar stage where I personally believe Atlanta is in, where one of the previous panelists talked about silos. There's so many different independent initiatives happening, but the more that we come together, the more impact we can have. And look at Miami now, it's becoming one of the top places to work for blockchain. But I've always participated in some sort of giving back activity over my career. One was I was on the board, the STEM board for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, where I went to talk to kids about technology, getting into STEM. Also served on the board of the South Florida Digital Alliance, where we work with organizations to bring technology to underserved areas throughout the city of Miami. So that's very important. One is the basic access needs to be there. It's something I'm very passionate about. And that's why I'm starting the Atlanta Blockchain Center, because I think that it's very imperative for us to get involved and stay involved and evangelize the technology. We have to make sure that we're literally in the middle of a gold rush, right? We're just talking about blockchain in general is game changing. That's why we've committed to building products solely on blockchain. We're not working on anything else unless it's related to blockchain, which includes NFTs and so forth. We're highly committed to the technology. But it's very important for us to evangelize and share that with our peers, with our friends, our family. At the Christmas table, birthdays, give a portion, give a token, right, to your aunts, to your cousins, to your sons and daughters for their birthdays. This is the future, and I think the more that we're vocal about it, to make sure that people at the table who may not be involved or otherwise interested, we've got to be the voice for that, and that's very important.
I completely agree, and one of the things that I've been thinking about, if anybody has any successful projects and you start to gain a very large treasury like Now's DAO or some of the other bigger DAOs and all of those, like they're doing, you might want to consider like setting that treasury up so that it can do grants to fund smaller projects that could be beneficial to marginalized communities and people that do or don't have access, and how can you give back in that way and provide even more people out there the opportunity to experience what you're experiencing. I think that's where I think that's where Web3 really shines, is we're all in this together. It's part of the slogan, so let's make it happen for sure. We do have a few more minutes, and I would love to kind of open this up to the audience for any questions you might have for the panel. I don't know if Elizabeth, you want to carry a microphone? Here's one. I think we have all of them up here. So.
All right.
Thank you. This is a great talk. I learned a lot. I'm really interested in understanding how you can raise capital for a company with NFTs. Like, what is the structure of that type of DAO? Like, how do you go about that? Like, what is the process of that?
I know there's gonna be some legal statements coming up real soon. But the general idea is, from a legal perspective, obviously, I don't have the experience on that, but from what she mentioned earlier, you're gonna probably need an LLC set up at some point in time. And then as time progresses, you can then turn the LLC out of the picture and move more towards a DAO once you understand who you're working with and what their intentions are at the end, right? So if you sell a big NFT collection and you get a bunch of money, it is more likely beneficial to you to have an LLC set up beforehand. Is that correct? See if I got this right. I'm just spitballing here to see if I know what I'm talking about.
So it depends, but are you asking about how do you actually do the fundraising, or are you asking about the legalities associated with the fundraising?
Like both. Like, what is the process? Like, if you're raising capital for a company, and you want to like give ownership of the company to whoever's purchasing the NFTs of the company, like what is the process? Is it just like how you would release any other NFT, or is it a different process for like going about that?
Yeah, so, again, from a legal perspective, Joe can talk about that, but from my experience, you would typically set up some sort of organization, some entity, right? Whether it's an LLC, whether it's incorporated in the United States or internationally. Because of the uncertainty of the laws, we typically, for the projects that we work with, recommend they work in an established international entity for their projects, right? So whether it's an LLC in the United States or international, you've got to establish some sort of debt protection there, as Joe mentioned before. Once that's done, the rest is all essentially technical in nature. So the artwork has to be completed, right? Obviously, you tokenize that into an NFT, and then you begin marketing. And that's one of the areas that we also assist a lot of projects in with marketing. I believe, in our community, we've got a community of 200, 300,000 investors across Twitter, Telegram, and our various channels. So we present these projects to our investment network, and they piggyback off of that and leverage that to build their own community. That activity has to be in place before the actual minting event, because that's where you're going to be raising the funds. It's during the minting process. So again, just to sort of recap, establish some sort of entity, both in the U.S. or international. Build a community, build interest in your project, and then you raise the capital.
So you could also, and we haven't touched on this yet, you could move to Wyoming and form a DAO. And we can also pass this along to our legal expert and what that looks like as far as like, what have they worked out in Wyoming as far as DAOs being a legal entity?
I'm not a corporate attorney. I feel like I give so many disclaimers. There is actually an
You're all we
and
have.
like I don't have to give any disclaimers around it's intellectual property, but I will say this. I think you've got to be careful when you have investors or buyers in the United States. Even if you form an entity outside of the US, if you have US investors, the US law can have a long arm reach. I think you also want to think about how are you raising. There are a lot of ways that you can do raises legally. You can do it under the crowdfunding regulations. You can raise from accredited investors. If you want to raise and have the members of a DAO own the work, again, you're back in the situation of, is that a general partnership? And how do you then enforce rights? How do you protect rights? How do you commercialize rights? So you really want to think about what are you trying to achieve, and that will inform the ways that you should fundraise, whether you should be an LLC or a corporation, whether you can take money from non-accredited investors, where they're based. There are a lot of factors that go into making sure that you're doing that with the best knowledge we have right now about the law.
Awesome, okay, so we have another question, but I just wanted to say, there's one thing that people are talking about, and you want to be very careful, there's security tokens and utility tokens. So security tokens are like stocks, meaning it's gonna go up in value, and you're betting that it's gonna go up in value, and that's where the SEC has full control, that's a security token. So that's why people talk about utility tokens a lot, which means you get a lot of use, you get access to a club, and you get, access to, free, Coke when you go to their, that's called a utility token. And there's something called the Howey test, that you can test your token to see whether you are a security token or a utility token. People are gonna throw these words around a lot, and it's still, like I said, it's very confusing, and it's, but you must be careful, and you at least need to know the difference between those. We have another.
The law is evolving, so even if someone gave you an answer today, there's litigation and there's regulation being developed now. It could be different relatively soon.
The world is shifting under our feet.
That's kind of a good lead into my question, I guess, which is specifically more for Angela and Marlon. I guess with your incubators, when you take on projects, obviously you have to try to vet them, but it's not possible to always be able to keep an eye on all of their actions afterward, and that if they end up being something that you have to distance yourself from because they may be misrepresented or they're calling it a security token, utility token, etc. What kind of precautions are you guys taking to be able to kind of shield yourselves from liability as being those incubator platforms? And are you even able to get like commercial liability insurance for that kind of thing?
I didn't hear that last part, but we do a very thorough due diligence on every single project that crosses our desks. From the project itself to the team, proper due diligence, we have to KYC the team members of the project so that should anything happen, we've got it taken care of and we can resolve the issue essentially. That's very important to us. For IDO participants, it is up to the project whether or not they want to KYC. Some projects do and some don't, and it's totally up to them, but like I said, we protect ourselves and our community of investors by KYC the projects, the team themselves. And then we really thoroughly, we communicate with these projects daily. We are going over their marketing plans and their roadmap on a regular basis, making sure they're staying on track. If we make recommendations, which we often do, we've done this, like Marlon said, we've had over 50 sales on the IDO platform. We know what we're talking about and we want our projects to succeed. So we provide this advice to them, this advisory. And when projects listen to us and actually want to take our advice and want to make changes to do better, we realize that these are the types of projects that want to succeed, that are willing to take the steps and make the hard changes sometimes and rework their entire tokenomics, remake an entire pitch deck because it's not beautiful and friendly on the eyes. That's what investors want to see. So I think the due diligence side is very, very important all along. And I didn't hear the end.
And the other part to your question too is the structure of our work itself. So we have an international entity that manages token sales. And then we have a US entity that is essentially a technology consulting firm for token sales. It doesn't host them itself. So from that perspective, there's separation of concerns, or because we have no idea what's going to happen. I'm personally, I think that the U.S. will realize the talent will migrate, the great ideas will migrate outside of the U.S. We'll see a lot of that happen now if they don't establish something that makes sense for everyone to continue to support this technology and innovate on blockchain versus allowing other countries to be more open to the concept. So we're well aware of that, and we structure our organization accordingly.
Hey guys, Bobby for Marlon and Joann. Can you give us 2 or 3 aspects that you typically, or that you see in projects that you want to be involved with, or that typically you see in ones that are really successful?
Lots of things. Well, for one, aside from what we just talked about, really having a team that has this credible experience, both in blockchain and crypto, as well as whatever their product field is. We want to know that they can execute on what they're pitching in their roadmap and in their technology. Can they do it? Do we really think that they can based on their past experience? But I also think it's very important to choose and work with projects that are working in this space right now. For example, we've seen play-to-earn games go bananas, and our community loves it. They love them. They love metaverse-related games. So we listen very closely to our community. We try to give them what they want, as long as it's going to be a successful project, that can get the job done. What would you add to that?
Yeah, the team for sure is number one. We look at who's behind this, right? Because having decades worth of experience creating products from conception through launch, I think what's always important is who's behind it. Are they able to pivot when necessary, right? If something isn't working the way it originally intended, are they, again, not only able to pivot, but keep the project on track and execute? So team one, the idea and the viability of it is the other. But for me personally, when we vet all the projects that comes across our desk, I look at the team above everything else.
I would just add, because I'm an IP attorney, I think it's important to think about what is the innovation or what is the creativity and how would we protect it. So if you think about the phenomenal success that the Axie Infinity team has enjoyed, I heard one of their leaders recently in an interview speak to the fact that they haven't really thought through what IP rights they're going to grant to Axie holders and which IP rights they're going to retain at the leadership level. If you think about the paradigm shift that happened with Dapper Labs, where we went from the Disney example where all the IP was locked up and centrally managed, to the CryptoKitties paradigm where you're able to commercialize up to $100,000 based on owning a CryptoKitty NFT, that really brings in the community piece that's been spoken to so often, but understanding what IP to retain and what IP keeps your community involved and invested in promoting the project is, I think, a worthy piece to consider. Excellent. All right.
I'd like to add one more note to what Joe just said. So we're going through a potential acquisition for one of the projects that we've developed on blockchain. And what they're looking for is the IP. That's the only thing that they're interested in. Not interested in the fact that it's a revenue producing organization or the clients. They're trying to acquire IP. So it's very, very important, as you said, to make sure that you consider that in everything that you're doing.
All right, we have one last question.
Hi, my question goes more towards, I don't know how familiar you guys are with nodes as a service. There are things like Strong Block and other forks of that. And also there were those DAOs that had those high APYs. I don't know how familiar you guys were with those, but
how are those sustainable and are they still gonna be around in the next year or so?
I can kind of touch on that a little bit. Those DAOs are offering those high APIs so that they can have liquidity for the rest of the people that are coming in the stream. Those won't last forever unless those DAOs keep popping up, right? The only way that you can keep giving 20% is if you have the ability to provide 20%, or, and I'm not saying this is the case, or it's a pyramid scheme, but I don't think so, because basically what they're doing is they're doing what's called a bonding curve a lot of times, and they're defining what that bonding curve is attached to and based on what percentage, and able to apply that to a return for those who are first investors. That's about as far as I feel comfortable going into that, but those APIs don't ever last for more than a year, maybe two, but they kind of decrease over time as people start to come into the project.
I've seen them as high as 3 billion%,
Right.
which is obviously not sustainable. But what I think is attractive is you have some more stable, more reliable yield. The Terra network and UST has been a pretty consistent 19-20%, approaching a year now. I think what's exciting is the opportunity to experiment in DeFi and to bring more people into the space, and to go back to the education piece. If we as people who see the value in Web3 are saying you could get less than 1% of your bank versus 20% on UST, that might cause people to start doing their own research about where the opportunities are.
Yeah, and we're gonna end the panel here. That was our last question. Also, I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, I believe it's the Blockchain Association, who does a lot of really great work and is up in DC, and they have offices in DC, and they're talking to our representatives and trying to change the laws that represent more of this technology that's moving too fast for the older people up there on Capitol Hill to keep up with. I highly recommend following them on Twitter. I was talking to one of the representatives for the Blockchain Association in East Denver, and it was a highly great organization. I highly recommend you check it out for sure. That's gonna do it for us here in the South Central.